What's up, guys, and welcome to a special edition video of GRP Ghost Recon Phantoms. I will be talking about legendary armors and inserts for legendary armors today. Now, the reason why I'm making this video is pretty simple. By now, many people have legendary armors. Maybe, obviously not everyone, obviously not most people, but many people. And maybe you just got your legendary suit of armor. Maybe you've had it for a while and you still don't know what's optimal. Well, I've had legendary armors for a long time, and I've experimented a lot with them, and I thought I'd share some tips and ideas with you on what is the best insert setup on both ultralight and ballistic armors for all the classes. And obviously it's just my opinion, and it plays to my style, but you might have your own, but these are just my ideas, suggestions, and hints and tips. So we'll start with assault, and the reality is, for me, my ballistic armors are all the same for all the classes. And what I do with ballistic is I try to get basically a combination of everything well balanced, but I want to make survivability the most important factor. I want to make sure the ballistic armor can take a lot of punishment. So you have 6 inserts, and one thing you'll notice is I don't use massive inserts. I think massive inserts are generally a waste of time. It's true you sometimes see and encounter enemies and players who have, with normal armor, 190 health as an assault. I even played against an assault once with ballistic. He had 200 health. And yeah, that can come in handy sometimes. But remember, that also means no damage mitigation, and most importantly, 0 anti-crit. And these days, when we're running around with crits of 30% or even higher in the case of assault weapons, having no anti-crit is a really bad idea. It's a really bad idea. But what I look for, as I said, is I look for a balance. I strive for a balance. But the most important thing to me is, obviously, as you can see, damage mitigation and health. So let's start with the damage mitigation. I am using max health inserts for everything, which gives me +5 more health than you could normally have with a normal tac suit, which would be, 165 if you put in max health inserts. So that's a little bit of an advantage. You have 170 maximum health. But more on top of that, I'm using a lot of damage mitigation. You can see the inserts I have here clearly. The total damage mitigation gives me 5.1. That is a lot of damage mitigation. Couple that with the basic 28% armor, as well as the very high health of 170, and you can take a lot of punishment. One area where this is really useful, in fact, is the team deathmatch. I don't play a lot of it because it's kind of mindless, but in that case, you don't really need a ton of, how should I put it, regeneration. Regeneration isn't that important in the case of team deathmatch, and so you can just take a lot of punishment, kill a couple of guys, and you die. But yeah, this is a setup that gives you a lot. Now, as for anti-crits concerned, there was a while where I just got really annoyed by snipers crit shotting me with an elbow shot for 220, or in the knee for 230 or whatever, and it still happens. And so for a while with all my armors, I raised the anti-crit to crazy level, 20% plus, and I got crit shot maybe once a week. But the downside of that, of course, was I wasn't just getting, avoiding anti-crit, getting crit shot, I was getting killed more easily. I couldn't take as much punishment, my regeneration levels sucked, etc., etc. So I came to a compromise. Everything's a compromise, even ballistic armor. You put a lot of inserts in one area, you're going to lose out on another area. It's just the way the game works and the way life works, right? Downside, upside. So for me, a pretty decent level is actually 9%. 9% anti-crit allows you to avoid the worst of crit shots from most weapons, because as you know, probably many of you know in the game mechanics, once a gun starts firing, particularly an automatic gun, only the first shot really has a good crit chance, and everything after that tends to go down, and eventually you'll have a 0% chance with crit shots. Helps you avoid that. It can help you avoid snipers, but you know, if you're playing against a good sniper with a 30% crit chance, you know, 9%, he still has a pretty high chance of getting a crit shot, and that happens to me, I'd say, pretty frequently. You know, it's annoying, you know, getting crit shot by a sniper, but you know, what are you going to do? If you up the anti-crit to something like 20% plus, you're going to lose out on everything else. Regen is a compromise for me. You know, I'm not much of a camper. I don't really like camping. And I've tried out a crazy build with like 5.4 regen. You know, you're up on your feet, you know, instantly, but then you lose out on a lot of damage mid, and you're down to like 152 health, which for an assault isn't that good. So this is a compromise. It's pretty good. You can get back on your feet more quickly, and there's almost a formula to this. I mean, the idea behind this setup is, with the very, very high health and the extremely high damage mitigation, you're taking less damage to begin with, so you're going to have, it kind of evens out, so you need less time to regenerate. Whereas if you went with a very low damage mitigation, low health, and very high regen, you're taking more damage to begin with, so you need more time to regenerate. So it kind of evens out. So this is my setup for assault, for ballistic. And honestly, I do the same thing with recon and support. I don't really see a point in making it very different. It's just it has 20% less health because obviously, or 20 hit points less than the other classes. You know, in this case, maximum 5 above maximum 130, 5.1, 9%, 2.2. And then of course with assault ballistic, or rather, sorry, support ballistic, it's the same thing. Maximum 150 health, 5%, 5 above the normal, 9% anti-crit, 5.1, 2 point, and the principle is the same. You know, it's just playing on the strengths of ballistic armor. Very high damage mid, pretty high health, decent anti-crit, and a decent regen rate. That's pretty much the way ballistic works. But when we're talking about ultralight, right, it really is a different story entirely. Right? I mean, ultralight is not ballistic. Ultralight, the strength of ultralight, obviously, is the speed, you know, for all the classes. Although I'd argue that ultralight on support and assault is a lot less useful than ultralight on recon because the speed levels, right? With ultralight armors, of course, you only have room for inserts, so you really have to think smart. You have to think intelligently about how you're going to insert things into the armor. And, you know, you go for compromise again. Because you don't have the 2 extra slots, you have to, or even 1 extra, you have to compromise. What do you do with the anti-crit? Well, my anti-crit for all the classes is 1 less than 9. It's a little bit worse, right? But it's still good enough to avoid most of the basic crit shots. I have roughly half the damage mitigation, roughly, because that's important. And it's actually 1 point, you know, a decent amount of health for an ultralight. So 159 is okay, and health regen is a little bit less. So it's kind of like a modified version of the ballistic armor. But the reality is, of course, as you know, with ultralight, you're not going to be able to take the same amount of damage as you can with a ballistic. It's all about the speed, right? And so it's basically almost half the values for the most part. Less health, obviously, it's not possible. A little bit less anti-crit, half the damage mid, and a little bit less health regen. And the setup for recon is not identical, but very similar. You can see you have 8%, a little bit less health, a tiny bit less health, a little bit more damage mid, 8% anti-crit, and identical regen. Right? And finally, for support, ultralight, it's pretty much the same principle as the recon, or rather, tiny bit more regen, similar health values to recon, 7 away from maximum normal health with 5 slots, 8% anti-crit, and 2.5 damage mid. So, you know, it's a compromise, right? And it's kind of just creating a balanced set of armor for an ultralight. And let's face it, the ultralight is just, it's all about the speed and what have you. And so it's, you know, for obvious reasons, going to have a different setup from ballistic, but you just can't put as much in. Now, on a final note, I'd argue that overall, ballistic is better for assault and support, and ultralight is better for recon. And the difference is, it's kind of strange because Ballistic on support and recon and assault is all identical. You have 28% values. But when it comes to ultralight, you're that much faster with the recon, right? And yeah, I mean, it's a huge difference. We're talking about 86 versus 74, and you feel the difference. I mean, you're like lightning with the recon ultralight. So, you know, that's a little advantage that recon has. Of course, he can take less punishment. His armor values aren't quite as good, but you know, whatever. Anyway, that's how I run my my setups for the armor, and I hope that was reasonably helpful at least. Obviously, you know, you might have your own setup. Maybe you like camping more, and so you need more regen if you're getting hit. Maybe you're just crazy with damage mid. I've maybe even like massive health inserts. I played against a guy once. He was all about damage mid. He put in all these massive health inserts. He was playing ballistic. I couldn't kill him with a shotgun. He just had something ridiculous, like 8 point something damage mid, and I just couldn't. I couldn't kill him with a shotgun. It was hard to kill him with other stuff. But of course, he lacked in regeneration. So everything is a compromise when it comes to inserts. But generally speaking, I think the most important setup for whether it's light armor, heavy armor, ultralight, ballistic, the two most important things, in my opinion, in this game are damage mid these days and health. You know, having high health and high damage mid is what's going to keep you in the fight, especially when you go toe to toe. A decent amount of anti-crit is good to avoid the worst of the crit shots, and of course basic regen. You can set it up in all kinds of crazy ways. Like I said, I ran a crazy regen setup of 5.4 regen once, and it was funny getting naded and then being back on your feet right away. But I think overall damage, mid, and health are the most important factors in this game, and then regen and the rest. Regen and anti-crit are the second most important factors. So whatever setup you have, be it the normal suits, tactical suits, or the ultralight or the ballistic, I think you should find your own way to tease it out and your own way to optimize the damage mitigation along with the health, and then the second, in my opinion, the secondary qualities of regen and anti-crit. So I hope that was helpful. I hope you can benefit from that and profit from it. We'll see. Possibility of a new weapon pack being released later this coming week. Who knows? If it is released, you know me, guys. I definitely will be buying it. I'll be covering it, and I'll be talking about the weapons to help you make a decision as to whether or not you should be getting the weapons. As always, thanks for watching, and I will check you out on the GRP battlefield. Take care, and bye-bye.